2 years! 2 years is all it took for us to start talking about the idea of this guy getting traded. Heck, it hasn't even been 2 years. It's been 2 seasons. Very big distinction there. Today we're heading over to the Columbus Blue Jackets and talking about one of the most high-profile, highly paid, and top-rated superstars on the team. A guy who had an opportunity to go back home in free agency 2 off-seasons ago. A player who was seen as one of the top playmakers and overall scorers in the entire league. But who decided to go to Columbus. Today we are talking about Johnny Gaudreau. Because now we have legitimate trade rumors talking about whether or not Gaudreau could be sent elsewhere around the NHL. Now, we're going to have a few more videos throughout the next few days chronicling some of these players that were involved in the Calgary Flames retool of 2022. We're going to talk about the Canucks, we're going to talk about the Huberdeaus, the Gaudreaus, they're all involved in this conversation, but this particular video is focusing on Johnny only. Johnny Gaudreau is now 30 years old, still the same 5'9", 165 left-handed left-wing player, now signed to the end of 2029, making $9.75 million a year with CBJ. The last season he had in Calgary was awesome, 115 points in 82 games played. The last season he had with the Columbus Blue Jackets was not as awesome. 74 points in 80 games, still great, but definitely not the 100-plus point caliber player he was before. Now, if you take a look at Gaudreau in this season's worth of play, things have gotten even worse. The guy only has 20 points in 33 games played, he's good for a point every 3 games or so, he's on pace for about 50 total points, which is nuts because you acknowledge that he had 50 assists in last season's worth of play, and now he's on pace for having the same amount of points 1 year later. Now, of course, the Columbus Blue Jackets are going through their own tribulations, and they have injuries, and they have guys that are going out there and scoring too. I mean, Zach Werenski is leading the team in points, for crying out loud. So it's definitely not just Johnny Gaudreau on this team that you could say is quote-unquote underwhelming. But when it comes to the progression of Gaudreau, this is a $9-something million player that chose to go to Columbus instead of going to the New Jersey Devils, that were also reportedly offering him money, and the Philadelphia Flyers, both teams that he would have had a stronger affinity to, since he is from Salem, New Jersey. He was a Flyers fan growing up. These were the 2 teams that everybody said, hey, they were the front runners, and then he went to Ohio. Big change of plans. Now, today's article that we're going to go out there and read, which presents this entire idea in the first place, was published by Jonathan Bailey on Philadelphia Hockey Now 3 days ago on December 18th. The Flyers could trade for Blue Jackets' Johnny Gaudreau. Oh boy, are we actually doing this? It's now gotten to a point where we're actually discussing trade rumors for Johnny Gaudreau 2 seasons, or not even 2 seasons, a season and a half after he had signed a huge, what is the math on that? Near $70 million contract? Well, that's exactly what Jonathan Bailey goes out there and writes. According to a league executive via the Ottawa Sun's Bruce Garriock, the Columbus Blue Jackets are willing to discuss just about anybody in the trade market. By the sounds of it, just about anybody excludes names like Kent Johnson, Adam Fantilli, David Jiricek, Zach Werenski, and some of their other young players. By extension, this means that superstar Johnny Gaudreau is up for grabs. From a Flyers perspective, though, there are a few things to consider. The Blue Jackets are not going to give Gaudreau away for free just because he's 30 years old and has a big contract. In addition, Gaudreau has a no-movement clause until 2026, meaning he would have to approve any and all trades or otherwise that involve him. Lastly, the former Calgary Flames star has a cap hit of $9.75 mil, whilst the Flyers only have $2.27 million in cap space. This is without Ryan Ellis on the LTIR. That would push the Flyers close to $9 million in total space this season. Now, the interesting thing that Bailey brings up in this article is comparable trades. What a trade between Columbus and Philadelphia could look like based on other trades that have happened in the past that have similar profiled players. In all likelihood, any potential deal is going to be modeled after the Timo Meier or Matthew Tkachuk trades. That means a first-round pick and either 2 really good roster players or 2 top prospects. The one issue with that is that the Flyers would be buying low. It goes without saying that Cutter Gauthier and Matvei Michkov are not on the table. Gaudreau is also much older than Meier and Tkachuk and is comfortably producing at the worst rate of his career this season. On the other hand, when Gaudreau isn't playing on one of the NHL's worst teams, he's highly productive. He's just one full season removed from his 115-point year. The article pretty much states that because of all of these things, it makes it a little bit easier to project a Flyers trade with Johnny Gaudreau, and the article even dives into saying that, hey, this is a coming home for real type of situation here, because in the past, Gaudreau had often expressed his desire to return home and nearly signed with the Flyers before ex-GM Chuck Fletcher's negligence forced Gaudreau's hand. I have a ton of family here, all my friends, the 30-year-old previously said. I actually have a wedding this weekend in South Jersey, and all my friends come back here. All my good friends and kids who I have played with all my life are from South Jersey, so it would be sweet to play here someday. You never know with sports. It's a lot of support back here in South Jersey and the Philly area. They follow me pretty well. So, when it comes to the idea of a Flyers trade, I feel like part of the reason this article was published and why the idea is even brought up in the first place is just because, plain and simple, it'd be kind of cool. Like, there isn't any tangible evidence or notes in this piece saying, yeah, the Flyers are trying to get him. The Flyers are interested and they're going for it. It's just saying, hey, they could do it. Like, considering the fact that Gaudreau has been struggling now, it's possible and it's probably more open to discuss the idea of him actually getting sent away, and what better squad than Philadelphia to go out there and acquire him for his services, right? But the thing with the Flyers is, this is a team that's unexpectedly been good this year. Like, of course, they're not world-beating #1 players type of good, but they have 39 points in 31 games played this year. They're tied for second in the Metro. The Flyers have been on fire, and if you're going to go out there and get Johnny Gaudreau, you have to be darndest sure that the reason he's been struggling in Columbus is because he's in Columbus, and not because Johnny Gaudreau took the $70 million contract and decided to call it a day. This is a player who has struggled so much over the past year and a bit. He's playing so much worse than he had been before, and you could debate part of that is because of his own motivation, part of that is because of the team. When he's playing with other superstars like Matthew Tkachuk and, for a time, Sean Monahan and Jiri Hudler and all the other guys in Calgary that were all good when Gaudreau was on the up and up, then he was getting points, right? But now in Columbus, Patrick Laine is injured, Zach Werenski leads the team in points, and he's a defenseman. Adam Fantilli is not like Connor Bedard level, and then you have a bunch of other guys that are not really pulling their weight either. Like, you could debate whether or not the Johnny Gaudreau production and the falter in that number from this season alone is not entirely his fault. And if you believe it isn't, then okay, feel free to go out there and shell out 2 top quality assets, a first and a top roster player or whatever, in order to get Johnny Gaudreau onto your team and start paying that guy till the end of the decade. $9-point-something million a year is not cheap, and you have to make sure that he is going to be that 100-point guy if you want to have any sort of redemption when making this deal. You have to make sure your fans aren't going to hate you for shelling out $9 million a year to a guy who is in a career low at this moment in time. It's a tough idea, but of course there's a hometown element that makes Philadelphia the more desirable destination. If you're a fan of the Flyers, if you're a fan of, heck, even the New Jersey Devils, what are your thoughts on this idea of Johnny Gaudreau getting traded once again? Excuse me, once again, no, he was never traded. He left Calgary in free agency. What are your thoughts on the idea of Johnny Gaudreau getting sent away from Columbus? If you're a Blue Jackets fan, would you actually be interested in this idea, depending on what you get in return? The Blue Jackets are still pretty bad this year. They haven't improved in the standings. They're literally last in the Metro and second last in the entire Eastern Conference. So what do you got to lose going out there and trading away Johnny? If you get another young piece to play with Adam Fantilli, if you get another young prospect that can help you out when you draft Macklin Celebrini or something, then would that not also be pretty productive? Johnny Gaudreau's 30, so why not go out there and use some of that to build up the future, right? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire Johnny Gaudreau trade idea. If you're a Philadelphia Flyers fan, would you want to get this done? What is the most you'd be willing to trade away to Columbus for a Johnny Gaudreau swap? If you're a CBJ fan, what is it you'd want from Philly to get this move done? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.